Dear Isle, Maine. Upon our visit was foggy and cold, quiet, only ripples on the Atlantic Ocean. We were welcomed ashore the Isle via the Dear Isle-Sedgwick Bridge. The scene was one from a myth or a story. Dear Isle's long history, as we came to learn, holds a mystery or two blurred in the morning fog. The municipality of Deer Isle, Maine is located in the mid-coast down Blue Hill Peninsula. The island and town are 3 hours east of Portland and an hour 15 due south of Bangor. Deer Isle and its dozens of rocky islands appeared about 10,000 to 12,000 years ago as the land and coast settled from the Ice Age period. Archaeological lore suggests that Vikings were the first explorers of the islands back in the 11th century, a potential theory for the Vinland candidate. By the 16th century, however, Algonquin-speaking groups settled the area, and white settlers did not arrive until 1762. The first settler of Deer Isle was William Eaton from Salisbury, Massachusetts. He and his family arrived on August 4th of that year, and the place was known as Scott Farm, or also known as Scott's Landing. Deer Isle became an incorporated municipality in 1789. In 1868, Isle Hut, a large island community further out to sea, separated Green's Landing on the south of the isle, set apart as Stonington in 1867. Deer Isle has a population of 2,200 today, a rebound from its historic low of just 1,100 in 1960, though it's still far shy of its peak population seen way back in 1890 with 3.4 thousand people. This was due to the island's flourishing granite industry that provided a strong jobs market on the island. Today, Deer Isle is a collection of multiple communities that are connected together by a series of curvy causeways and multiple bridges over its 30 square miles of land and multiple islands. Among said communities, we have Agemogen, Little Deer Isle, North Deer Isle, aka the roughly original location of the old Scott's Landing, Sunset, South Deer Isle, Mountainville, Sunshine, and Reach. Deer Isle's communities remained isolated for much of their history, that is, until the arrival of steel and cable in the 20th century. However, way back in 1792, John Scott, a descendant of the earlier settlers, was employed by the town to row settlers across Agemogen Reach to the mainland in Sedgwick. In 1807, the town granted Scott $80 to construct ferry landings on both sides of the reach to make it easier for residents and those bringing supplies to the island to go back and forth. For those wondering, a reach is a segment of a stream, river, or arm of the sea, suggesting it is a straight area uninterrupted by any outcroppings or other such, more of like a channel between pieces of land. Ferry transportation across the reach to Rockland and beyond continued for generations and was largely led by the Scots on the northern end of the isle. However, the ferry service became inadequate as bad weather, storms, nor'easters, and with the winter ice simply made travel impossible. On occasion, the winter ice would be thick enough for cars to go back and forth, but there was still a great period of time in the spring and fall when ice wasn't thick enough or too thick for a ferry to barge through. Cabbage Haskell, yes, you heard it, Cabbage, or also known locally as Cab, was documented saying that the Scots service not only was inadequate during environmental conditions, but also socially inadequate, as they had lost their professionalism and supposedly would not allow certain residents to cross or use their ferry service if they did not like them. As you can imagine, Cabbage and his family were not liked by the Scots, and they were not allowed to do the ferry service, hence they had their own ferry service for residents. Long story short, a bridge was very well needed. This came to a head in the 1930s as two bad winter storms in 1934 and 1935 made winter travel horrendous. Many residents called for change, and it became a hot topic among local residents. While local residents couldn't agree on whether to have a bridge or continue ferry services, the situation was brought up to the state, and a $500,000 grant was proposed in 1935 to the overall voting population of the state of Maine. Long story short, it passed, and that's why we have a bridge today. However, the bridge is not as tall as it was originally meant to be. The federal government approved the bridge build in the 1930s, but said that it needed to be tall enough for ships to pass through, meaning it would have to be 100 to 110 feet tall. Local residents believe that, due to local lore, that this was because of the Rockefellers who had a home over on nearby Mount Desert Island and wanted to use a high bridge so they could pass their yachts and personal boats through the channel. However, despite much discussion and advocacy throughout the state, throughout the town, with the federal government and with the state, the bridge was lowered to only 85 feet tall. This was seen as a massive win, and through 16 failures and revivals, the bridge was finally built. On June 19, 1939, Governor Lewis O. Barrows cut the ribbon on the $900,000 project, and the bridge became a staple of the Deer Isle community. Folklore runs rampant through the Maine coast and its various islands. However, fact rather than fiction, it has become far more surreal and fascinating as years go on, no matter the context. And that specifically applies to Deer Isle, as one of the state's archaeological mysteries occurs here. It is no secret that the Maine coast has been populated for thousands upon thousands of years by the first original inhabitants, the Native Americans that called the coast home. They had villages, trails through the islands, and burial places, many of which have been found and recorded throughout the coast and inland in the state. We also know that French exploration of this region was very prominent during the 1600s and even late 1500s. There is lore that Vikings were the first ones here in their quest for Vinland some 1,000 years ago. However, that's not necessarily proven. Campbell Island, located between Little Deer Isle and the Main Isle, holds one of Deer Isle's focuses of lore, stating that a supposed Viking grave and a Viking burial place is located within the underbrush of the island. This is quite hard to prove, and no one has done so as of yet. However, there is one interesting burial that rattles many archaeologists and anthropologists' minds. A skeleton in armor, found in 1899 by Major Powell, the director of the Bureau of American Ethnology of the Smithsonian Institute at the time, and Frank Hamilton Cushing, who ran a small-scale excavation program in the Brooklyn area of Maine, a town just outside of Deer Isle on the mainland. In the summer of 1899, Hamilton and Major Powell were running a small-scale excavation on Campbell Island, an island just east of Deer Isle, still within the municipality, an island that was known to have Native American activity historically. Through their exploration, they found a historic shell heap, and within it, two bodies. One believed to be a Native American chief buried in full garb, and another much harder to explain. The second body was mummified and fully buried in armor, specifically French armor. This armor at the time was said to hold the emblems of the First French Crusade, some 1,000 years ago. The armor was badly rusted, and no photos were taken, only sketches that were held in the Smithsonian. However, due to my research, I couldn't find any of these sketches or images, as they were too old and probably too far deep in the archives and never uploaded to the internet. News articles from the New York Journal and the Boston Record and others relayed the misconception that these artifacts were 1,000 years old. The true mystery was why a French body, specifically in French armor, probably a French soldier, was buried with a Native American in the same place. Philadelphia Inquirer notes the discovery by Cushing as one skeleton being discovered. Cushing was able to detail that it was French remains due to the designs on the armor, specifically the cross with dots, which was evidenced as one of the earliest of French exploration in the area. So the real question there remains: how did a French soldier get buried here and placed within a shell heap of Native American design? Well, this remains a mystery today, one that can't be explained, and any evidence or more thereof to decide. Well, that's all I have on Deer Isle today. Thank you so much for watching this video to the end and staying with it through all my mispronunciations, my historical facts, and my wonky maps. Have a groovy day. Please like, subscribe, and share, and we'll see you soon.